My mother tossed me a bag and told me I was on my own, then told everyone I'd gone to college. Years later, we crossed paths again and she asked, "You're still holding a grudge?" So I shot back, "You're still proud of what you did." "You're an adult now, Ethan," she spat, arms crossed, lips a tight, thin line. "Time for you to figure life out on your own." Then she just walked away, back to the kitchen. Like she hadn't just tossed her only son, me, out into the street with absolutely zero warning, not a dime to my name. I just stood there, wearing my beat-up sneakers and a thrift store blazer, clutching this duffel bag I didn't even remember packing. Later, it hit me. She must have packed it the night before, while I was still asleep in my bed, dreaming those naive dreams of independence, thinking maturity meant freedom, not this abandonment. I swear I waited. I stood at that door, frozen, just praying she'd reconsider. Or at least offer a ride to the bus station. She didn't. That front door slammed shut behind me with a thud that felt heavier, more final, than any argument we'd ever had. Just like that, I was homeless. Happy birthday to me, right? What a way to turn 19. Okay, so I know what you might be thinking. Just another kid complaining about growing up. But hold on, let me give you some context. My name's Ethan, and when this happened, I was still in high school, not even halfway through my senior year. I mean, yeah, I was 19, but I was a pretty decent kid. Good grades. Worked part-time at the local grocery store, kept to myself. I wasn't out partying or getting into trouble. Honestly, I thought I was the kind of son who deserved a fair shot, or at the very least, a roof over his head until graduation. But in my mother's eyes, the day I became an adult was the day I stopped being her problem. It had always been just the two of us. My dad, never in the picture. I asked once, when I was 8, and her response was this chilling silence, followed by a cabinet door slamming shut. I learned not to ask again. Mom juggled a bunch of odd jobs, cleaning houses, waitressing sometimes just disappearing for a week or two, only to come back with a bit more money and, more often than not, new bruises. When she was around, she was either furious or both. I tried not to give her any more reasons to yell. I kept our tiny apartment spotless, cooked basic meals, and covered for her when she blew off parent-teacher conferences. I quickly understood that love in our house was conditional. She never said, "I love you." No hugs, no affection. Just rules, demands, and this constant cloud of guilt. If I needed new shoes, I was ungrateful. An A wasn't good enough. It had to be an A+. If I was quiet, I was gloomy. If I spoke up, I was impolite. The goalposts moved constantly, and no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. Still, I was foolish enough to hope that turning 19 would be different. That she'd see how hard I was trying, maybe even be proud, silently. I didn't expect some lavish party we couldn't afford, just a quiet dinner, a peaceful evening together. I was so naive to think she'd actually care. Turns out, she'd been waiting for this day, just waiting to finally wash her hands of me. The night before my birthday, I came home from work and she was already in one of her moods. Chain smoking by the window, pacing like a trapped animal. I knew better than to say much, but I offered to heat up some leftover noodles. She just waved me off, didn't say a word. Later, I overheard her on the phone in her room, talking fiercely. I couldn't make out much, but one line cut through me. "He turns 19 tomorrow. I don't owe him anything." I lay awake most of that night, trying desperately to convince myself I'd misheard, that she didn't mean it. But deep down, I knew. I think I'd always known she was just looking for an excuse. She wanted her life back, whatever that meant for her, and I was just in the way. Her convenient justification, her twisted guilt trip. That morning, my birthday morning, was silent. No breakfast, no welcome. Just that duffel bag by the door and those ice-cold words. "You are an adult now. Figure life out on your own." I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded, turned, and walked away. It felt like I was leaving behind something that had been shattered long before I even understood what it was. I walked almost 3 miles to an old park I used to visit as a kid, sat on a freezing bench, and opened the bag. 3 pairs of jeans for shirts, a sweatshirt, a toothbrush, and my own $25, which I'd stashed in an envelope under my mattress. She'd taken that too. Guess she figured I didn't need it. That was the start. The first deep cut. That night, I huddled in the back of a laundromat, hoodie pulled low, the constant hum of washing machines my only company. The next week blurred. I slept on cold park benches, ate whatever scraps I could afford, and snuck into the gym to shower whenever possible. I was too proud, too ashamed, to tell anyone at school. I just kept showing up, exhausted and starving, pretending everything was fine. Teachers started to notice, though. I'd hear whispers. He looks unwell. Something's off with Ethan, but no one actually asked. Until Mrs. Carson. She was my guidance counselor, one of the few adults who genuinely looked me in the eye. She pulled me aside, asked if everything was okay at home. I tried to lie, but the words just tumbled out.
She didn't cry. She didn't gasp.
She just listened. Truly listened. And then she acted. She helped me apply for emergency housing, got the principal to approve lunch coupons, even reached out to a local group that helps kids in crisis. I hated accepting charity, but I had no other choice. That small bit of help kept me afloat. All this time, though, nothing from my mother. No calls, no texts. Nothing. She just vanished like I'd never existed. I was out of her life, exactly what she wanted. But here's the thing. Every single night, lying on that chilly shelter bed, I made myself a promise. One day, she would regret every single word she'd ever said to me. One day, I'd be so much more than she ever imagined possible. She'd have no choice but to witness it. Not because I needed her approval, not anymore. But because I needed her to understand how wrong she was about me. About everything. And when that day came, I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't fight. I'd just smile and walk away. I didn't know how yet, but I knew with absolute certainty that I would make her regret it. Every single syllable. And the first crack in her facade came a few weeks later when I uncovered a truth my mother never, ever wanted me to find out. For weeks after she kicked me out, I clung to the idea that it was temporary, that she'd come around, that she was just stressed or scared. I needed that illusion, because if your own mother can just discard you like trash and not care, what does that say about you? But she didn't come around. In fact, the more I learned, the clearer it became she'd been planning my exit for ages. Mrs. Carson got me into the local youth shelter's assistance program. It wasn't glamorous. A bunk bed in a shared room, chores, mandatory group meetings twice a week. But it was warm. It was safe. It was mine. For the first time in forever, I felt a flicker of stability. I picked up extra shifts at the grocery store, took night shifts whenever I could. I kept my head down, my grades up. My social life?
Gone.
My ability to care about it?
Gone too.
Every spare moment was about survival. There was no time to process the pain. Not until a freezing Thursday afternoon in late January. I was volunteering for extra service hours at the community center when I ran into Mrs. Parker, our old neighbor from the building. She recognized me instantly, even though I must have aged 10 years since she last saw me. "Oh my goodness, Ethan," she chirped, pulling her coat tighter. "Are you all right, sweetie? Your mom said you went off to college early." I just stared. "College." She nodded, eyes wide.
"Yes."
That's what she told everyone. Said you got a scholarship, packed up on your birthday, and just left. She was just telling Mrs. Turner how proud she was, how you were becoming a man and starting your life. I couldn't even speak. Proud? She hadn't even texted me. She'd skipped the January graduation planning meeting where parents RSVP for cap and gown payments. There I was, standing in front of a neighbor who'd been fed this elaborate dream, while I was living in a shelter, eating instant noodles, and constantly worrying if my uniform smelled like disinfectant. That was the first crack in her carefully constructed lie. And things just got worse from there. Turns out, my mother didn't just toss me out. She replaced me. About a week after my birthday, her younger sister, Aunt Rachel, apparently visited from Florida. I didn't connect the dots until one of the younger kids from the building DM'd me on Instagram. "Hey, Your cousin is living at your place now. What happened? My cousin? I had no idea I even had a cousin. But that message, mixed with a sickening curiosity, made me dig. Aunt Rachel had a son, younger than me, maybe 16. His name was Aiden. I remembered the last name from sorting mail. Aiden had a history. In and out of group homes, trouble at school, petty theft, all the things my mother used to accuse me of, even though I never did them. Now, he was sleeping in my bed, wearing my old sweatshirt, rummaging through the fridge I used to stock with groceries I paid for. And my mother? She was uploading cheerful selfies with him. Captioned things like, "So proud of my nephew. Red heart new beginnings." Nephew, not son. Her son didn't exist anymore, apparently. I felt like I was floating above my own life, like someone had taken a hacksaw to the very foundation of my identity and left me to balance on splinters. The one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally had just reinvented her life, airbrushing me out completely. But I wasn't truly angry yet. Not until I found the envelope. I was helping Mrs. Carson organize a charity drive in the school office, a mountain of mail, scholarship offers, community flyers, report cards. And then I saw it. An envelope with my name on it. Thick, official looking. It was from Millstone Technical College, dated December 2nd, weeks before my birthday. A full-ride scholarship for their business management program, with a monthly stipend and housing options for low-income applicants. Delivered to my home address. I stared at that paper for a full minute, the horror slowly, sickeningly, clicking into place. My mom got this letter. She knew. She knew I had a way out. And she never gave it to me. My hands trembling, I folded the paper back into the envelope. "Mrs. Carson," I whispered, barely audible. "Can I ask you something strange?" She looked up concerned. "Of course, Ethan. What is it? Do you know if it's legal for a parent to reject a college offer?" Her eyes narrowed immediately. "Ethan, what did you find?" I handed her the envelope. She read it twice, then sat bolt upright. She knew. I continued, my voice shaking but steady. She knew I had this, and she still kicked me out. Mrs. Carson didn't say anything, but the tight line of her jaw spoke volumes. She promised to help me contact the school, and she did. But it was too late. The acceptance deadline had passed. They'd already moved on to the wait list. The administrator was genuinely sympathetic. If we'd heard from him in December, this would have been a done deal, she said. But now there's nothing we can do. I walked out of that meeting in a daze. Not because I'd lost the scholarship, but because I'd never even had the chance to accept it. My mother had stolen my future, my way out. And for what? That's when the anger finally hit me. A deep, vibrating hum in my chest, like a machine gearing up. For days, I moved in a fog. I went to work. I went to class, but my mind was on an endless loop, replaying every time I'd tried to impress her, every dish I'd washed to avoid her yelling, every A I'd brought home hoping she'd finally see me. She didn't. She never did. She saw what she needed. A scapegoat, a workhorse. And the moment I stopped serving that purpose, she replaced me without a second thought. But what really pushed me over the edge? What turned that simmering anger into something focused, something dangerous? It was Aiden's birthday party. February 20th, a Saturday. I only found out because someone tagged the apartment complex in a post, and I followed the breadcrumbs like a bloodhound. I don't even remember deciding to go there. But there it was. She'd thrown him a full-blown party. Balloons. A banner. A freaking cake with "Welcome to the family, Aiden," written in cursive icing. I saw it all. The videos, the group selfies, my mom drunk and dancing, a red Solo cup in her hand like she was 21 again. And Aiden, grinning like he owned the place. I stood outside the building, fists clenched deep in my coat pockets, watching the celebration through the windows. I told myself I wouldn't go in. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. But then I saw her step outside for a cigarette, just like she always used to. And something inside me just snapped. I walked up slowly. She didn't notice me until I was just a few feet away. She stopped. Then, she flashed that fake smile she used for teachers and landlords. "Well, look who finally grew a spine," she said, taking a drag. I didn't say a word. She motioned dismissively toward the apartment. You're not invited. I figured, I replied. She puffed again. Still upset I fired you? Grow up, Ethan. Life's tough. I did you a favor. You threw away my scholarship, I said, my voice strained, barely containing the rage. Her smirk vanished. I found the letter. You knew I got accepted, and you hid it. What? She scoffed, genuinely surprised. I knew you'd muck it up. You couldn't even clean your room. You think I was going to let you waste someone else's money on some dream you'd drop out of in a semester? You never gave me a chance. I gave you life, she shot back, her voice rising. And 19 years. That's more than my parents ever gave me. You didn't give me anything, I said, stepping closer, my voice low and steady. You took everything. And you're still doing it, but not for much longer. Her eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? No, I said, a chilling calm washing over me. It's a promise. And with that, I turned and walked away. I could feel her eyes burning into my back the entire time, but I never looked back. Not once. That was the breaking point. The last time I saw her face to face. But it wasn't the last time she'd hear from me. Because from that moment on, I stopped just surviving. I started planning. I'd love to tell you that after that confrontation with my mother, something just clicked inside me. That I walked off into some metaphorical sunrise, head held high, heart strong, already halfway to a better life. But that's not what happened. What happened was, I fell apart. On the outside, I kept it together. I showed up for work, sat in class, nodded through meetings with my case manager. To anyone looking, I was just another tired teenager counting down the days until graduation. But inside, I was unraveling. Her coldness, her absolute certainty that I would fail, it didn't just hurt, it hollowed me out. Everything I'd been holding together with duct tape and sheer denial came crashing down. The rejection, the betrayal, the way she'd replaced me like an old piece of furniture. I couldn't stop replaying how easily she'd stolen everything I'd worked for, not just the scholarship, but my very belief that I mattered. The worst part? For a while, I believed her. I started coming in late to work, not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't sleep. My mind was a relentless loop of those memories, her telling neighbors I'd gone to college, the photos of her smiling with Aiden, my replacement, and that damn cake. Welcome to the family, like it was some sick joke. I'd lie there in my shelter bunk, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, genuinely wondering if she was right, if I was broken, if I was going to screw everything up. I failed 2 quizzes, forgot my gym clothes, missed a meeting with my counselor. Small things, but they piled up. One Friday, I just skipped school entirely. I couldn't do it. I sat on a bench behind the strip mall, staring at the cracks in the pavement until the sun went down. I didn't cry. I didn't do anything. I just sat there, thinking, I can't keep this up. I can't keep pretending I'm fine. But the funny thing about rock bottom is how quiet it is. No cheering, no audience, no one waiting to pull you out. You just sit there with your pain until you either give up or you decide to move. That's what I did. I made one tiny move. I called Mrs. Carson. I don't even remember dialing her number, but I remember her voice on the other end, calm, warm, like someone turning on a light in a dark room. I told her everything. Not just about my mother, but about how I felt, the crushing weight, the exhaustion, the deep shame. I expected a pep talk, a "you're strong, you're capable" speech. Instead, she just said, Ethan, you don't have to carry this alone anymore. And then she showed up. That spring, something finally started to shift. She checked in every few days, little texts. Did you eat today? Need help with homework? Want me to proofread that essay? These tiny lifelines slowly, gently, pulled me out of the fog, reminding me that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible. I stopped trying to prove my mother wrong. I started trying to prove myself right, that I was worth more than how she treated me, that I could build something, not out of spite or rage, but out of a quiet, stubborn belief that I deserved better. I threw myself into school. Early mornings, late nights, asking questions, taking notes like my life depended on it, because it did. My grades soared. I even started tutoring other students in math and economics, not for money, but because I actually enjoyed it. Education became the first thing that was solely mine, and I excelled at it. My evenings were spent at the youth center, devouring articles on small businesses, investment strategies, tax breaks, anything that could give me an edge. I wanted to understand the world in a way my mother never would. Jamal, one of the shelter volunteers, noticed how much time I spent in the computer lab. He was this older guy, ex-military, no nonsense. One day, he sat down next to me and just said, "You've got hustle, kid. Ever thought about starting your own thing?" That thought, it lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. My own thing? At first, I scoffed. I was broke, living in a shelter, no contacts, no fancy degree. What could I possibly start? But Jamal kept pushing. He told me how he used to flip used cell phones on Craigslist, how he started with nothing but a cracked iPhone and turned it into a side hustle that paid his rent. "It's not about starting big," he said. "It's about starting smart." So I started. I noticed everyone at the shelter always needed basics: socks, toothpaste, razors, chargers. But nobody wanted to trek across town to the cheap stores. So I found a dollar store near my job that offered small bulk discounts. I bought a few items, resold them for 50 cents more in the common room. People paid for the convenience. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I kept meticulous records, tracked profits, learned what people wanted when they wanted it, how to price it. I reinvested every single penny. I bought used books on sales strategy and customer psychology. I watched YouTube videos about drop shipping, affiliate marketing. By that summer, I had a binder full of notes and a spreadsheet that made me feel like a Wall Street analyst. More importantly, I had confidence. Real, earned confidence. Not the loud, flashy kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind that comes from building something from the ground up, something no one can ever take away from you. I didn't invite anyone to my graduation in June, but Mrs. Carson was there in the front row. And Jamal was there too, cheering like he'd raised me himself. No mother, no distant relatives. Just me, in a cap and gown, walking across that stage with a piece of paper that screamed, I mattered. I made it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a family. Not the one you're born into, but the one you find when everything else falls apart. After the ceremony, I didn't cry. I just stood there, looking out at the crowd, realizing I'd done it. I'd survived. I'd rebuilt. And I wasn't even close to being done yet. That fall, I enrolled in community college, not Millstone Tech. That scholarship was long gone. But it didn't matter. I got financial aid, applied for every grant and local scholarship I could find, took out a small loan, and I kept working. Evenings at the store, weekends running my little supplies stand at the shelter. I moved into a subsidized student housing unit, tiny but mine. I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by textbooks and boxes of dollar store toothpaste. And I was happy, because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, grade by grade. By the time I turned 20, I was running an online shop out of my dorm. Nothing fancy, just curated care packages for students in shelter programs, bundling basic needs together. I'd personalize them, add handwritten notes, even offer discounts to the shelters where I'd once stayed. Orders started flowing in, and word spread. I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was building something bigger. Despite everything, the grades, the business, this whole new life I was building, there was one thing I couldn't shake. That promise I'd made to myself. That one day, she would regret everything. Because while I was rising, I just knew something else was happening. Something on the other side of town, something that was about to utterly collapse. See, vengeance isn't something that just lands in your lap. You have to build it, brick by painstaking brick. It's not like in movies where the hero just gets a makeover and suddenly has a dramatic showdown. Real vengeance, the kind that truly stings, that makes people feel it in their bones, that takes patience, timing, discipline. You don't win by yelling louder or throwing punches. You win by becoming so undeniably successful, so utterly unignorable, that the person who wronged you has no choice but to see you, to acknowledge you, and to regret every single choice that led them to that moment. And I was getting there. By age 20, my little side hustle had taken off. What started as a box of snacks and basics in a shelter common room had blossomed into a modest, but steady, e-commerce business called Packet. Clean branding, care packages tailored for college students, low-income families, shelters. I'd built a Shopify store, taught myself basic SEO, and reinvested every single penny into inventory and site design. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about creating something no one could take away from me. I kept it quiet, though. No bragging posts, no social media fanfare. Not even my professors knew the full scope. I didn't want any eyes on me until I was absolutely ready. I still carried that image of my mother's cold, smug smirk when I told her she'd stolen my scholarship. That look that screamed, "You'll never be anything without me." I wanted to burn that image right out of my mind, and the only way to do that was to make her eat those words. But to do that, I needed more than just success. I needed a plan. And, weirdly enough, it started with Aiden. Honestly, I didn't care much about him at first. He was just a pawn in her game. A new warm body for my mother to manipulate, parade around, and guilt trip into loyalty. I figured he'd vanish from her life, just like everyone else eventually did. But then I got this email. From a girl I knew in high school, not close, just a few classes together. The subject line, "Hey, is this your cousin?" Attached was a snapshot from a Reddit thread. One of those local anonymous community boards. The post was titled, "Aiden from Unit 14 seen taking phones from gym lockers again." My stomach dropped. I opened it, and the thread had a few fuzzy photos. A quick search of his full name on Facebook led me down a rabbit hole of public posts. Angry rants from people who'd been scammed, PayPal chargebacks, lost dog fundraisers that just seemed out of place. Another comment mentioned he'd been banned from 2 different youth centers. A third claimed he tried to sell stolen AirPods at a mall kiosk. I even found an old post from Florida. "Watch out for this kid, known for stealing laptops from schools." I just sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. It was all so sickeningly familiar. This was who she kicked me out for. This was the person she gave my bed, my room, my life to. Suddenly, I understood something I hadn't before. My mother didn't just betray me. She gambled. She wanted to rewrite her own narrative, to become this good, loving guardian to a troubled child, the kind of person she could brag about to neighbors and post about online. But she was too arrogant to see she was just repeating the same destructive pattern. And that gave me my first opportunity. Not for vengeance, not yet, but for information. I started watching Aiden from a distance, purely online. Social media, local Reddit pages, high school alumni group chats. He was messy, the kind of kid who bragged about the dumbest stuff. He'd post photos with wads of cash, claiming it was from legitimate side hustles. He made TikToks flexing in sneakers. I recognized from my old closet, the ones I saved up for junior year, the ones I thought I'd lost in the move. He was literally walking around in pieces of my past, smiling like he'd earned them. And that's when I created it. The burner. A fake Reddit account, a new Instagram profile, completely untraceable. I used it to quietly comment on threads, spark conversations about Aiden, and ask loaded questions. Nothing obvious, just enough to pique people's interest. Then one sleepy Sunday, I was working a shift at the grocery store. In she walked, pushing a shopping cart, her hair curled, cheap perfume trailing behind her like a cloud of denial. She didn't notice me. I was bagging groceries at the end of the express lane. But I noticed her. And the man she was with. Tall, maybe late 40s, wearing a suit jacket over jeans. Looked expensive, but tried to be casual, failing miserably. They weren't holding hands, but their body language was undeniable. She was laughing, twisting her hair, putting on that phony giggle she used when she wanted something. They walked right past me. She didn't even glance up. So I leaned over to the cashier next to me. "Do you know who that guy is?" "Oh, him," she said. "That's David. He comes in often. Owns a couple of those IT businesses downtown. I hear he's loaded." David. That gave me my second opening. David Salvatore, owner of 3 small electronics stores in our county. He did local commercials, had a LinkedIn, even an Instagram where he mostly posted photos of his stores, some trade show pics, and lately her. I waited until she left, then asked for my break early. I stepped outside, pulled out my phone, and searched David's tech store hometown. Buried deep in his feed was a Valentine's Day post. A photo of a dinner plate, a candlelit table, and, just visible at the edge of the frame, her hand, wearing that ring she always wore. The caption, "Best V-Day I've had in years. Lucky man." That confirmed it. She'd landed someone new, someone with money, which meant she had something to lose. And that was my third opportunity. I spent the next 2 months meticulously building the pieces of what would become the ultimate setup. First, I revamped Packet, got serious, registered the business, opened a P.O. box, applied for a microgrant from a nonprofit that helped youth entrepreneurs, and I got it. I used the funds to invest in inventory, automate parts of my fulfillment, and even hired a part-time web designer to polish the site and rebrand. Then, I created a special section on the website, Packet Partners. It was a program for businesses to sponsor care packages for youth shelters, complete with branded thank you notes, social media shoutouts, and a community partner badge. Guess who I contacted? David Stores. I used a fake name, posed as a marketing manager, and sent a formal pitch via email, complete with mock-ups. I knew he'd bite. He was exactly the type of guy who loved to appear generous. We went back and forth for a week, and eventually, I got the confirmation. This looks great. Happy to donate some accessories and be featured. Just keep our brand visible. My girlfriend loves this kind of community work. His girlfriend, of course, had spun some convenient lie about how she used to work with kids, or run support groups, or whatever other fantasy she'd fed him. And now, she was about to be publicly linked to my company, the company built by the son she abandoned. But I wasn't done yet. I needed one more thing. Receipts. So I started collecting them. Every Reddit thread, every photo of Aiden holding stolen goods, every comment from someone claiming he owed them money, every blurry gym security photo, every Twitter rant, every TikTok of him flexing cash. I created a Google Drive folder, captioned and sourced everything, organized by date, and backed it up 6 times. Finally, I ordered one of my own care packages. But this one contained something special, a typed letter, signed with my full name and address, addressed directly to David. Inside, I thanked him for supporting youth like me, and I subtly mentioned how I'd started the business after being kicked out of my home at 19 with no family support. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I let the timeline, the tone, and the sheer emotional weight speak for themselves. I wanted him to ask questions. And I wanted her to sweat. Because now I had everything. I wasn't going to drop the bomb, just yet. I wanted her to see who I'd become, what I'd built from the ashes she left behind. And the proof of her betrayal, a platform she couldn't ignore, and a carefully constructed reputation she was just beginning to build, one that I could utterly demolish with a single, undeniable truth. That's when the real revenge would finally begin. The best kind of vengeance, you guys. It doesn't come in a blaze of glory, or some screaming brawl in a parking lot.
No.
It walks in quietly, takes a seat at the table you built, and calmly waits for your adversaries to realize they're eating their own consequences. And that, my friends, is exactly what I did. After David agreed to be a Packet partner, I waited 3 weeks before launching the campaign. Just enough time to set the stage perfectly. I updated the website, made it look sleek and professional, minimalist design, soft colors, and big, bold text thanking David Stores for sponsoring care packages for underprivileged youth. Then I added one final touch. A spotlight story on the homepage. A personal essay titled, "Kicked Out at 19, Now I'm Sending Help to Kids Like Me." It was brief, under 600 words. No names, no dramatic crying. Just my voice, calm, clear, and absolutely devastatingly honest. I recounted that morning I turned 19, the packed suitcase, the slammed door, the gut-wrenching realization that I wasn't loved, just tolerated, until I was no longer legally her responsibility. I wrote about sleeping in a laundromat, about missing out on my scholarship, and about discovering I'd been replaced in my own home. I wasn't begging for sympathy. I was just telling the truth. At the very end of the essay, I made sure to thank our new business partners, specifically mentioning a local electronics company owned by a man who reminds me that there are kind, generous adults out there. I knew my mother would see it. David followed Packet's Instagram, and I subtly tagged him in the post announcing the story. It blew up. Seriously. Small accounts, nonprofit sites, local influencers, they all reposted it. Even the shelter where I used to stay commented, expressing how proud they were of me. 3 days later, I got a message from David. It was short. Just a few lines. Hi, Ethan. I just read your story on the website. This is powerful stuff. Forgive me for asking, but is your mother's name Laura? I stared at the screen, my heart absolutely pounding. I typed back. Yeah,
She is.
he didn't respond immediately, but I knew. I knew I'd just thrown a grenade into his carefully manicured picture of her. 2 days after that, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was her. Breathless, frightened. Hey, Ethan. I saw what you wrote. I think we need to talk, please. I didn't respond. The next day, another voicemail. Then a third, each one more desperate than the last. By the end of the week, the Packet Instagram was flooded with new followers. Many commented, sharing their own similar experiences. But a select few had something different to say. Hey, is that the same Laura from Unit 14C? Wait, she's the mother? Wow, she kicked him out for Aiden? That lady was always sketchy. I knew it. Then someone, not me, I swear, dropped a link in the comments to all those Reddit threads about Aiden. The gym thefts, the frauds, the phone locker drama. It spread like wildfire. The woman who painted herself as this devoted guardian to a problematic teen had kicked out her own son and covered up the misdeeds of a boy with a growing reputation for stealing. Once that fire was lit, it was impossible to put out. Within days, people were putting all the pieces together. David contacted us again, this time with less interest and more sadness. She said you ran away, he wrote. She said you were trouble and that she was protecting her relative from a bad home. I believed her. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He quietly ended his sponsorship. No fuss, no headlines. But I noticed all of her pictures vanished from his Instagram over the next few days. Then came the real consequences. Aiden was arrested 2 days before my 21st birthday. He was caught trying to sell stolen laptops on Facebook Marketplace, under his real name. The cops traced the serial numbers back to a community center that had been robbed just a week earlier, and he was caught on camera. And guess who showed up on the local police blotter? You guessed it. Laura Williams, 46, charged with obstruction and possession of stolen property. When the cops came knocking, she tried to hide the laptops in the crawl space, claiming they were donations, that she didn't know they were stolen. They weren't buying it. Her mugshot was grainy. She looked older, worn, like she'd just realized the party was over and the check had bounced. I saved that photo. A reminder that karma exists, even if it moves slowly. David completely cut ties with her. I heard from someone at his business that he was furious. She tried to play the victim, claiming I was lying, that the internet had twisted her story. But the receipts were public. The truth didn't need my defense. It stood on its own. She lost the apartment soon after. Couldn't pay rent without David. The electronics stores stopped donating to her causes. She tried to crowdfund for legal fees, but that went nowhere. Someone linked my essay to her GoFundMe page, and the goal never even hit $100. I never went to see her, never called. Because I'd already won. Not by shouting, not by slamming doors, but by living well, by creating something she couldn't touch, and by becoming the man she said I'd never be. Today, I run Packet full-time. We ship nationwide, work with shelters in 4 different states. I've spoken at conferences, mentored teenagers who've been through things far worse than I have. My story has even been featured on podcasts and by a nonprofit documentary crew. But I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it as a reminder. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to defend you won't. Sometimes, family isn't about blood. And sometimes, the absolute finest vengeance is quiet, calculated, served ice cold, complete with tracking delivery and a handwritten thank you card. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, if your own family turned their back on you like that, what would you have done? Have you ever felt that deep need to prove someone wrong? Not with anger, but with pure, undeniable success? I really want to know your thoughts in the comments below.